Hello, 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 salud, buenas tardes for those, of course, in the Spanish markets. How's it going? Welcome back from, of course, myself and from Jill. I'm Aidan, for those of you who haven't encountered me before, but you should have in episode 1 of this series on Google Analytics by the wonderful people at Semrush. Now, as I said, kind of in that particular sentence, this is a series. Oh, Jill's getting very excited about talking to you already. Keep yourself, Jill. Be quiet. Be quiet. This is episode 2, and episode 2 predominantly, of course, as we said, and as indeed is on the Semrush website where you all registered, is around marketing acquisition. So we talked predominantly around, how you set up the account, the admin settings, the filters, so excluding things like IP addresses from your team and from your international offices, should you have any. And we talked really about a model called house model. So talking about the account structure, thinking about the account as a house under one roof, and the properties and the views. And of course, the back end of things and how user setup works and how we might make sure that our data is sanitized and clean and clear and ready for, of course, all things reporting. But we did cover quite a lot of ground last time, everything from annotations through to setting up content grouping. And of course, all of that is available as a recording on the Semrush webinar pages, which you can watch if you didn't, of course, naturally get the time to attend episode 1 in this particular series. Okay. As a recording on the Semrush webinar pages. And so we are thinking really about... Which you can watch if you didn't, of course. Sorry. And we're thinking about really how this time we validate our marketing, making sure really that our paid social is in the right order and in the right place and set up in the right way. And our Google Analytics, of course, ensuring that we have all of the data that we need for all of our marketing efforts, one way or another, which is the focus of this particular episode. So hello, everybody. Long-winded little introduction there, joining us on YouTube right now. And as ever, we've had a lot of questions come in around marketing acquisition. How that will work, a bit like many of the other webinars, should you have been on them before. We'll be talking predominantly around the presentation. I'll hand over to Jill for the majority of that. That will sort of run around maybe 35 minutes or so, 30 minutes, and then we'll jump into questions from you, of course, in the YouTube audience, and indeed equally from the forums that you've already asked and across social media, and any questions that have built up over the past month between episodes 1 and episode 2. So that's really where we're at. But as I say, part of a series, and just so you're aware, if you're only jumping in for the first part of this particular webinar, we will be doing another one around events and goals and a little bit of segmentation in the beginning of September, which will be on the 4th of September, same time. So that'll be 5 p.m. London time, but I'll remind you of that once again at the end of this particular session. So that's really all the housekeeping stuff. Aside from one thing, do feel free to ask questions. We're here, it's kind of our purpose, and Jill might nod along with me in the background here. Our purpose really is to give you as much value as is possible. So if you don't ask questions, then you don't get answers. So the hope is that you really think about what is going on with your own account, really think about what's going on with your own business, so that we can troubleshoot some problems together. Now, no question is a stupid one, and just because it is about your business doesn't mean that it's not relevant or informative or interesting for everybody else, okay? Because it is. We learn from one another's experience in this industry in particular. So fully encourage you, really fully encourage you to ask as many questions as you like. And of course, I'll be curating them throughout the session, and we'll be fielding them to be answered by either myself or by Jill at the end of the session, or at least within that particular time frame. But I will stop giving you the logistics of webinars, because indeed I'm starting to bore you, I'm sure. And I'm going to pass on to Jill to take you through this particular session around acquisition and acquisition tracking in the context of the wonderful, amazing Google Analytics. So I give you the phenomenal Jill Quick. Jill, take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hope this works then. Sorry for cutting in on you, like with my face. Try not to do that again. Okay, so I will now share my screen, and We are all good to go, hopefully. So we have called this webinar Tracking Like a Champ, because I honestly believe that if you have got a really clean account setup, which is what Aidan talked about before, where you've got all of your data that's coming across your domains and you've got the right filters and the right views, then you can start digging into the reports and actually understanding, well, how did they get there? And that's where tracking comes in. Now, whatever it is that you're doing as a business, there are 4 main reporting areas inside of Google Analytics. The first one is about audience, and that's going to give you information about who's going to your website. Are they boys? Are they girls? The city, the devices they're on. Another one is the acquisition, which is what we're going to be focused on, which is all about how do they get to your website. And then behavior, what do they do when they're on your website? We'll cover that in the session in September. And conversions, I like to say, are we still in a job? Now, the tracking is so vital to understand, because I've seen far too many mistakes in incorrect tracking, and it's purely down to not knowing what you don't know, and it's a little bit fiddly to understand, because I can pretty much bet that the majority of people that are watching this webinar and on the recording, you don't really lie awake at night and think, I wonder how Google's core reporting API defines all of my marketing channels. Like, nobody really sits at night and thinks that. I do, but I'm slightly sad and really like my analytics. But understanding where your traffic's coming from is needed, because somebody is giving you a marketing budget, or they are paying your salary, or you've got some additional resources that you're fighting for, and we can't get away with it anymore in marketing. If somebody is doing something for you, or you're paying for some marketing, they want to know, what did they get back from it? Now, the question to you guys is, how upset would you be if you found out that the marketing channels that are in your reports are all jumbled up, that you don't actually have the data in the right pot? Now, hopefully some of you feel a little bit nervous, because you might have made decisions on those marketing strategies and tactics that, if the data was a bit cleaner, you may have decided to put your money and resources elsewhere. So what we're focusing on today, you go into your reporting interface, you go into acquisition. If you go to the all traffic report and hit channels, then you will see a report that you're probably quite familiar with, which is the default channel grouping, and it's listing all of the different marketing channels. Here we've got organic, search, social, direct, referral, affiliates, paid, search, display, and other. And it's showing you how many users came from that channel, what's the bounce rate, the paid session, and more importantly, the conversions that came out of this pot. Now, I'm going to touch on this at the end, but it's very worthwhile banging the drum repeatedly. This report is giving 100% of the credit to the last non-direct channel. So if you have a user journey where somebody maybe started on a social media post and then went onto your website from email and then did an organic search and then clicked direct, 100% of the credit would have gone to organic for securing that sale. Now, you need to bear that in mind when you're reporting, because I talk about it like football. That if you have a football team and 1 or 2 guys or girls score all the goals, you don't send the rest of the team home. So you've got to remember, when you're looking at this, that you wouldn't look at it and go, oh, well, it looks like paid search is rubbish, because it's probably assisting in conversions. It's not the star player for them. So we're going to dig in to make sure that the marketing that you're doing, that all of your campaigns are going in the right buckets in here. What you do not want is to have marketing channels being put in the wrong buckets, because then you really are making mistakes and you're all going to be having a very hard time. Now, the way that I like to think of it, if we go back to our house model, you've created your house, you've created your floor or your townhouse or whatever, and you want to invite some people over, your visitors, your potential customers, your returning customers, your prospects, and you want them to go into your house and hopefully leave with some sort of conversion in mind. But pretend that this default channel grouping, this core reporting API that is defining those channels, pretend it's a bouncer on your door. Now, hopefully I'm not the only one, but there's other people that are you've been to a party or an event and you're queuing up outside and you maybe didn't get into the VIP room and you wanted to go in the VIP room. This bouncer is going through a little checklist to work out where have people come from, and it's going to allocate where they sit inside of that house. So if you've got visitors coming in and you've tagged your marketing correctly from email, for example, provided you followed the rules that the bouncer has, so you've exactly tagged it the way that they want to see it, it gets put in the right bucket. The same goes for social media. You don't need to worry about organic. Google is really, 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 really good at recognizing traffic that comes from a Google recognized search engine. So with this in mind, we want to make sure that we give this bouncer a little bit of a helping hand, because occasionally the rule book that they are looking at, it doesn't always make the right choices because it's a computer program. We went through this in the first session. It's a bit of code that you put on your website that is going to start tracking what your users are doing on your website. It's not a human being. It won't look at your tagged parameters and go, oh, I see what you were trying to do there, Jill. No, it's just going to do exactly what it said on the tin. So when I'm talking about tagging and tracking, what I'm referring to here are campaign tags. Now, campaign tags are a way to kind of help that bouncer, help that call reporting API understand where did that traffic come from. And once somebody's clicked on this link, it then passes that information to Google and it can recognize which channel it's come from and it gets popped into the right bucket. Now, what this looks like, because some of you might be thinking, I've got no idea what you're saying there, Jill. They look a little bit like this. You'll probably notice them a little bit more now that I've mentioned them. I, for fun, like to click on people's email campaigns and social media campaigns and see how good or bad their tagging is. And for the user, so if I click on this link, I still go to the website, so it doesn't interfere with the user. You absolutely do not do this on your actual website. So this came up in the last training session that we ran. Somebody started tagging their website internal links with UTM parameters. Do not do that. If you do that, you might as well just pour gasoline on your analytics and set it on fire. You've trashed your data. These tags are to be used for your inbound marketing campaigns, the traffic that's coming to your website from organic or email or social media or wherever it is that you're doing with your marketing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break down what each of these different parameters mean, and then we're going to walk you through some best practices. So the first thing to think about with our URL link is the medium. Now, medium is almost like a big, broad bucket for you to put all of your marketing channels in. So think about email marketing. Email is a medium. Organic is a medium. Social media is a medium. And then depending on how you group your traffic, you would have paid search as a medium, etc., etc. Now, it's really important to see these as very broad buckets because you are going to drill down into this when we start talking about the source. So just to recap, medium, big, broad buckets for your marketing channels for things like organic, email, paid search, etc. When we start looking at the source tells you where does that link live. So if we go back to what we had there with our mediums, if you have a medium for organic, then the source is going to be, well, this came from the Google search engine or the Bing search engine or the Yahoo search engine. If it's for email, and this is where I find a few mistakes, people get their sources and mediums mixed up and they don't understand how to tag the source for email. So for this, if you've got a broad bucket for email, and that's for all of your email marketing, the source is, for me, the name of the database. So you've got to think how you actually group and segment that database. So it could be you're sending out a monthly newsletter to your entire newsletter database. I would then tag this as medium equals email, and the source newsletter database. Then maybe you've got another tactic going for abandoned cart if you're doing e-commerce. Again, the medium is going to be email, and the source, where does that link live? This is our cart abandonment email, that kind of thing. You can drill down as far as you'd like to go for this. So your abandoned carts, you can do your newsletters, you can do your onboarding emails, whatever you want to do. Just make sure though with this source that you don't put, as you should never put, any personal identifiable information. So you would never have this as the source. I don't know, maybe if I was doing a mail out from me, I wouldn't put my email address in here, because you don't want to be putting any personal information into Google. So we've got our big broad buckets, medium, we've got our source, where does the link live? And a social media example for this as well would be, if the medium is social, then the source would be, it lives on Facebook, it lives on Twitter, it lives on LinkedIn, that kind of thing. We've then got a campaign name. Now, this is for when you've got several different marketing channels and different tactics going on, but they live under an umbrella. So at the moment, because it's hot and sunny in Europe, and I think pretty much everywhere else in the world, there are a lot of summer sales on at the moment. So you might be having an email campaign going out to your existing database, where you've got the medium equals email, the source newsletter database, and you might tag that campaign name, because it's grouped under the same budget lines, as Summer Sale 2018. And then you do a campaign on Twitter and you're boosting that post. Again, you can have a medium for paid social. I'm going to loop back to how you do that in a second. Source, where does the link live? Twitter. But I'd use the same campaign name for that Summer Sale 2018 program. Now, what this means is when we go back into our analytics, instead of just picking apart all of the different sources and mediums, I can just say, do you know what, Google, can you show me all the traffic that came from the Summer Sale 18 campaign? And I can group together all of my mediums and sources under one group, which is really, really nice. I'm going to mention this quite a few times because it's super, super important. You do need to make sure that you are consistent with your tagging. So if you have 5 people creating links and you all create them with different letters, case sensitive, uppercase, lowercase, spaces, you're going to fragment your data and you're going to be having quite a bad time. So we've got our UTM parameters for medium. We've got our source, where does it live? We can now group everything under the same campaign name. You've then got something which I really, really like to use, which is content. Now, what this will do is it allows you to further slice and dice your data. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a banner ad on a particular website, which is a skyscraper, and you've got a call to action tag as well on the same page, but both of these links go to the same URL. You could just tag it and say the medium was display and the source was whatever the website name is, and leave it at that. But if you wanted to understand the behavior of your users, you could create 2 links, and the only different factors is the parameter for content. And you could say, well, this is the skyscraper banner, and then this is the call to action. So you can further analyze, where did people convert, where did they click to go onto your website? I do the same for my email campaigns. Let's say you've got a gorgeous email campaign and there are 3 links that take me to the same landing page, but that link could be an image, that link could be plain text, that link could be a call to action button. Same thing, I can do medium is email, source, newsletter database, campaign, summer 18, but then have another extra little bit on there, which would be, and here's a link for people that came from the image, these people came from the call to action. It's just going to give you a little bit more information as to what's actually going on in your creatives. I find it really, really useful. If you're going to do anything, and again, this has just come from experience of doing this talk quite a lot, it might seem overwhelming, and we do have a template to help you do this so quickly. If you don't do this, you will make a mess of your data. But if at the bottom line, you just tag it with the medium, you're going to save your bacon, because we're going to explain where things go wrong a little bit later on. And obviously, the final part for this all to work, you have to make sure that the URL that you want the visitors to go to is the correct URL. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person that's had an email from some company and then they send you an email about 5 minutes later to go, oops, sorry, there was a broken link in there. Do double check that the URL that you're sending people to actually works. And if you have any legacy links, so links that have been created months or 6 months or maybe even a year or longer down the line, I found mistakes in tracking when you've done a site refresh and you've got URLs that redirect, and sometimes those URLs get smushed up a little bit, especially if you haven't done redirects through server side, and you lose all the source and mediums and it gets thrown into the wrong bucket and everybody's having a bad time again. So make sure that you've got the right URLs and life will be beautiful for you all, ladies and gentlemen. So let's break it all down into something that we call the tracking triangle. When we are thinking about tagging our campaigns, tagging our marketing that's coming in, think of the URL as the where. Where am I sending my traffic to? I want it to go to the home page. I want it to go to this specific landing page. The medium is a big, broad bucket. How are they going to get there? Oh, they're going by email, they're going by social, they're going by organic. The source will break down where does that link live. So the what, so we're doing email. What email? Oh, the newsletter database, the onboarding database. We're doing social media as the medium. Where does the link live? Oh, it's from Facebook, it's from Twitter, it's from LinkedIn. And then hopefully with your campaign names, the whole purpose for you to do this marketing is to drive a conversion or some sort of profitable customer interaction to make everything work and gorgeous and wonderful. Now, just to kind of confuse things a little bit, and I'm sure I'm not the only person in the analytics community that this really annoys me. Aidan is way more neurotic, I think is the word I'm going to use for you there, Aidan. I can't see your face, but I'm sure you're going to be nodding along. He likes things in a nice, neat place, and inbox zero, that kind of thing. But inside the Google Analytics report, even though medium is the big broad bucket and then you further slice down the source, it is reporting source, then medium. And I honestly think that that's where some of the mistakes come from the tagging, that if you get your sources and mediums mixed up, it breaks the computer program and they're going to throw your marketing in the other bucket, which I'm going to show you an example of further on in this webinar. So just bear that in mind when you look in your Google Analytics report, it reports it the other way around than is logical. I don't know why. I don't know if they'll ever change it, but Google, if you're listening, it'd be really nice if you could do that. Thanks very much. So let's go through an example, and I've now switched the sources and mediums, which pains me, but it's how it will appear in the Google Analytics report at the moment. So we're sending our email campaigns. You're sending it to your company's URL. The source, where does it live? Newsletter database. The medium, email. And the campaign, Black Friday, New York 2018. I kind of like to put dates, if I'm honest, on a lot of my campaign names, because you might have the same campaign over different times, and it's useful just to not double count it if you've got time sensitive things. The next one is for paid search. Now, this is where, just to add in the tiny complexities with this, you can have more than one medium that sits into that channel grouping, and it's kind of in the name, they're grouping the channels. So if you're doing paid search, where does that link live? Well, I'm doing PPC on Bing and I'm also doing it on Google. Now the mediums for this could be CPC or PPC or paid search. If it's tagged with any of those three, that bouncer goes, I know exactly where you guys have come and I'm going to move you into the paid search bucket, and life is great. And obviously with your PPC campaigns, you're going to group those campaigns in your in the right order in the different categories that you want to group your campaigns in. So the bouncers ready at the door, you've got some traffic, but what happens if you don't tag? So some of you might be thinking, do you know what, Jill, this sounds like a bit of hard work. I'm going to carry on doing my marketing and I'm not going to bother adding any URLs with these campaign parameters, because Google is going to understand where my traffic came from and they're going to put it in the right bucket. I'm really sorry to tell you guys, but that is a big fat lie. Let's take email as one of the biggest culprits that I see when I do an analytics audit and I start getting questions from the marketing team saying, do you know what, Jill, we're doing loads of email and it never shows up in analytics. We've got a bit of data discrepancy going on here because our email system is giving us all these wonderful figures, yet when we go into analytics it doesn't quite add up. And one of the things that we really believe at the colouring in department is that marketing is a revenue generating department. Like, we have a responsibility. We're not fluffy, like we are acquisition, retention and growth. But if you can't prove what's happening, if you can't report on what's happening, then you're never going to win that argument. It's the quote that we had from the first session: without data, you are just another person with an opinion. So let's say you've sent out loads of emails and you haven't tagged any of them. If you do not tag your email campaigns, depending on where it's opened, that bouncer is going to put it into different buckets. Now, the first one is if you've sent an email campaign and the user that's clicking on your wonderful email creative is doing it from Outlook and it's hard locked on their desktop. If they click on that link, the parameter is going to be set to none. And that means the direct bucket. So all of that email that's been opened, especially if anybody's on the call now from B2B and you've got a lot of your audience that's opening email on a desktop hard locked Outlook, then all your email campaigns are going to be thrown into the direct bucket when it should be going into the email bucket. Same thing if you've got the user that is opening that email in Gmail, for example. Google now has some parameters, but it thinks that a website is giving you a link. So it goes into the referral bucket, and the source, where does the link live? Mail.google, yahoo.google, whatever. Both instances are wrong, and life is pretty hard for anybody that's been doing email and you're not getting the credit for it. So email is a big priority for me to make sure that you're tagging and bagging that correctly. Otherwise it will go in referral or direct, and it's just really difficult to start unpicking all of that data and taking credit. Another issue that we come across a lot is organic. Now, organic in terms of social media. So I'm going to break this down now to a first example being paid social media, because pretty much now if you're going to be doing any form of social media, you have to do you have to pay, don't you? You have to give Facebook or Twitter some money. So if you are doing a boosted post on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, and you do not tag your marketing campaigns that this has come from a paid source, then Google is going to put this into referral. Now, what that means is any traffic that came organically, and by that I mean I start posting something about Semrush on my Twitter and a friend of mine clicks on that link. That will now show up as the source's Twitter and the medium's referral. I then click on a sponsored Semrush link, and let's say that they didn't tag it, that's also going to get counted as referral, and the source is going to stay as Twitter. Now, the problem with this is that I now can't say to my boss, you know, that money that you gave me for that paid social media, I'm not 100% sure what happened with it or if it did anything, and you've now just lost all credibility and you can't get any budget, which is not good at all. The other side to this as well is if you're doing organic, your staff are doing the posts, you might want to isolate the traffic that they're doing. Now, one of the things that I've seen, and I disagree with the advice, is to tag it as CPC. Now, you're not wrong. It is a cost per click, but that bouncer, the default channel grouping, categorizes CPC as paid search, which is where all your AdWords, all your gorgeous AdWords marketing is going to go into. But I'm going to tell you how we can get around that in a moment. So hopefully, just with these two main examples of kind of culprits, if you do not tag, they go in the wrong bucket. We're all having a hard time. Other culprits where you may be finding inflated traffic, if you have got traffic sources coming from HTTPS, so you're a HTTPS and it's going on to HTTP, it's going to flip them from referral to direct. Let's say you've got a lot of PDF documents with a lot of links in. Anybody clicking on those links inside of those documents, there are no parameters, so it's going to go into the direct bucket. I was with a charity yesterday that we're doing some work for, and they use a software for email media. So they have lots of graphics and designs in all of their staff signatures. Same problem with your email marketing though. If you don't tag those staff signatures, then it's going to get thrown into direct or other unless you tell it otherwise. So hopefully at this point I've either scared you to death, or if you are doing this, well done you, go get yourself a pat on the back and a nice drink after this. But if you don't tag, things go in the wrong bucket, life is pretty bad. So how do we spot this? So if you are thinking, do you know what, Jill, you're right, actually, we've been doing paid social media and email, and I think our direct is pretty high for, you know, the company that we're in, yada, yada, yada. You're going to go to your all traffic channels report. And then you're going to go at the top and click on secondary dimension and just type in source medium. And then it's going to layer next to the default channel grouping exactly what the source and medium that belongs inside of that default channel grouping. This is when I can start to see issues if I've got things like the sources and mediums mixed up, or I've got lots of medium is none and the source is mail.google, yahoo.google or something like that. It's starting to give me an indication that people maybe are not tagging things the way that they should be. Here's what I normally see, and where you can start getting mistakes and why you've got to be so consistent in your tagging. So this is an example for an account, and as you can see, email had 73 users coming in from about a 3-month period, and I had the team go, we don't understand it. We're getting our budget slashed for email. We know it's working. Our email providers are telling us that we're getting really good open rates, really good click-through rates, but it never ever appears. Why is that? And when I started to drill down by adding that secondary dimension, I could see lots of mail.googles, mail.yahoos and none. And then it was a simple question to the team, are you adding any UTM parameters to your email? And they all said none. I said, great, you've got like 7,000 users from direct that may not be direct. You've got some coming in from referral that may not be referral. That's probably going to come in from your email. With the other bucket, so with this particular example, 10% of their users came from other. Now, other is, I don't know if this is the right way to describe it, but I describe it as the man drawer data of hell. I have a drawer in my house that is all down to my husband, and we've moved house with this drawer, and it's full of crap. It's full of batteries and foreign currencies and Allen keys and things like that. It's just got stuff in it. Other is where data goes to die, in my opinion. Other is where the bouncer is going through that list to go, right, it's not coming from organic, it's not coming from paid search. There are parameters, but I can't work out where it's come from. So I'm just going to throw that little traffic source, whatever, into the other bucket. Now, when I see things going into other, it's things like the paid social ad example we've got here. Because there isn't a default channel grouping for social ad, Google's like, yeah, you can't just create stuff that Google doesn't know. It's a computer program, as we said. It just gets thrown into the other bucket. And for the inconsistencies that I see, this example is the same campaign, but 2 people were creating the links. One liked to use a capital F, one likes to use a lowercase f. They just fragmented their data, and we had to frantically go in and try and do searches to try and pick all of these up. And then I've got my CPC example for Facebook where, and this is a true story, I have a friend who works for an agency and they lost a client, and a big spending client, because they said, look, really sorry, we've gone into the reports, we never really see any traffic for our paid social media, but the other agency that's doing paid search is doing a freaking awesome job, so we're going to keep them. And obviously overnight the traffic just tanked and everybody had a hard time. And that's because they were tagging it as CPC, which Google is going to think is paid search. So to really get to grips with the little sheet that bouncer is going through, this is the system defined default channel grouping. You can find this on the developer's guide, because if you go into admin, it just says system defined, and you're like, thanks for that. And you have to go off and understand it. So this is the rule book, and you have to do exactly as it is defined by the core reporting API. So one thing to flag here immediately is email marketing. It is lowercase. I had a client yesterday that was using Salesforce, and they had automatically tagged all of their emails for Salesforce with uppercase E, which meant that this all went into the other bucket and didn't get thrown into the email bucket, which it should have done. Now, if you look in this, you'll see that there's this paid search, fantastic display, social, email, but there's a few that are missing that may need to be created. Things like there's no groupings for paid social or retargeting or staff signatures or PDFs or SMS text messages, and the list can go on and on and on. Now, don't worry, dear Semrush listeners, because you can fix it. You can fix this by tinkering with your settings. Now, this is advanced stuff to do, and we do this in our test view. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to the first webinar that we did where we talked through different views. You want to do this in your test view, because if you make a mess of this, you're going to trash your data, and it's going to be recorded in the change history logs, and everybody's going to know it was you that did it. You don't want that to happen. So we're going to do this in our test view, check that everything works, and then we're going to roll it over into the reporting views that we're using to base all of our decisions on. So if you were all ready, and I'm hoping this is going to work because going live is always hard, we've got a video to do this, I'm going to walk you through the process. So here I am in the admin settings. We get here by clicking on the little cog on the bottom left hand side of the analytics interface, and you've got your account, properties, and views. Now I'm in my test view, and what I'm going to do here is we make sure that we're in our test view, and we go down to our channel settings. So that's just down here. You're going to click on channel settings and then click on channel groupings. And just like magic, she says when it's loading, the default channel groupings are listed. That is what is fueling the core reporting in that acquisition channel. And you'll see we've got all of our system defines. Now, when you want to create your own one, so let's say you want to create your own bucket for paid social, just tell the bouncer what the rule is. So we give it a name, say the medium contains or matches regex, and then you're going to put in paid social. You're then going to give it a color. I picked red because I like red. Hit done, and very important, scroll down to the bottom and hit save. I've done this before and forgot to save it, and I cried because I had to redo all of my work again. So once I've done this, you'll see that I've now got another channel, system defined, and user defined are the ones that I've created. Now this goes in order. So what I'm doing now is this is a drag and drop feature. You want to have your more specific ones at the top, and then have your more generic ones at the bottom. So I always throw direct at the very, very bottom of the list, and then I move all of my user defined up at the top. So what we've done here is we've basically said to that bouncer, you know that little sheet you've got where the system has to match this? Anybody coming that has got a tag that says the medium is paid social, please can you put them in part of the room with all the other paid social people so I can understand where that traffic is coming from. Now, as with most things with analytics, it happens the day that you create them. You have to do this for every single view that you want to see this information. So we've got several views, as you can see. We've got one for America, one for Australia, one for the United Kingdom. I had to do this 3 or 4 times, but that's fine. It doesn't take very long to do. It's just thinking through the process of what you need to see. So making sure that you keep a consistency with your data sources. So I put in that user defined bucket paid hyphen social. If Aidan started to tag our work with paid underscore social, the bouncer, again, there's no empathy there. It's a computer program. It's not going to go, oh, I see what you did there. You put an underscore, whereas no, it's just going to get thrown into the other bucket. So just like the examples we had earlier, where we had people using uppercase and lowercase, when you've created these user-defined buckets, this is like gospel. You hand this down to everybody. Everybody must play along, because if they don't, they're going to ruin your data and you're going to have a really hard time justifying the budget and the resources for all of the work that you are doing. Now, just to kind of complicate things a teeny weeny bit, that default channel grouping that powers acquisition, as I mentioned at the beginning, that is working on one of 7 attribution models that you can have in Google Analytics. And that means that 100% of the credit goes to the last non-direct channel. So in a case example where hopefully you've tagged everything correctly, a user sees an Instagram post for a dress and they go, well, that's a cute dress. And you're going to click on the link, and the source, where does it live, is Instagram, Medium, social. I visit the website, but I'm on my phone and I'm on the train and I'm really, really busy. But you've cookied me and you're going to send me a retargeting display ad to go, hey, there's that dress that you were looking at. Medium display. And the source, what's the name of the website that had the display advert? So let's say it was like stylist.co.uk or something like that. I go back to the website and I'm like, yeah, do you know what? I do like that dress. I'm not quite ready to buy it, but I'm going to sign up for your newsletter. You then send me a newsletter and I click on the link, and you've done as I've told you. You've tagged it as email and the source newsletter database, and then I decide when I'm at work, I've remembered your URL, I type it directly into the browser and I convert. In that acquisition report, 100% of the credit goes to the last non-direct channel, which means the newsletter would get 100% of the credit. Sorry, retargeting, sorry, Instagram, you get a big fat 0 next to your name. However, we know that people have a customer journey. We know that people have several stages in the journey, and you want to make sure that the right people get the right credit. So we can do this, and we do this by looking at a report in the conversions. Now, I need to make a point here that this report will only work if you have goals set up on your website. So if you don't have goals, you can't do this. But we're going to go through that in the 3rd session. So lots of time to get our house in order for that. But in the multi-channel funnels report, you can see assisted conversions. Now, just to complicate things, this runs on a different reporting API to the acquisition one, which means if you have created any user-defined buckets for things like PDF documents, paid social, SMS, staff signatures, or whatever, they are not going to show up in the multi-channel funnels report. However, you can work around that, and we do that by going to the assisted conversions. And we are going to scooch you over on the top line here, and you are going to select the sources and mediums to see what's going on, but we want to create our own user define grouping. So what I'm going to do here is click on the channel groupings, and I'm going to copy the MCF channel grouping, and I'm going to rinse and repeat what we just did in the admin. So I'll create one called user defined MCF channel grouping, and then I'm going to go through and define my channel, and I'm going to do exactly as I had in the view settings. So for paid social, again, medium, matches, regex, paid social, and again, they have to match exactly as you've done in the back end. Now, what's nice about this is this will only work on your account from a personal level, but you can go into your admin and just get a link and pass it to your team, and then everybody will start to see the assisted conversions of what you're doing. So to do this, we go back into admin, and under your personal tools and assets, one person needs to create this, and then in your custom groupings, there's my beautiful user defined. I'm going to click on actions, and I'm either going to copy it or share it, and in this instance I'll share it, and I could just send this link to Aidan and go, Aidan, click on this link and you will now see all the assisted conversions for all the new groupings that I have created. And there we go, that's pretty much it. I get to see the right marketing that's coming in, I get to see the assisted conversions, which is a little bit of a fairer scorecard, and we will dig into that in session 3. So we've gone through quite a lot here, and I know we've still got some time to do some questions, but just to recap what we've talked about, I can't stress this enough. If you do not tag your marketing, then it will go in the wrong bucket. Google is a computer program. If you're doing email and you're not tagging it, you're in for a bad time for those reports. Because the default channel grouping does not have special groupings for things like paid social or PDFs, your job is to sit down with your team, your consultants, anybody that's doing any work for you, and you want to sit down and work out, right, what are our mediums, our big, broad buckets? How are we going to be labeling our sources, and what's our campaign names? Like, do we always have a date at the end? Like, how are you going to structure those links? When you do this brainstorm, and we've got a template to help you go through this channel planning, you can then say, right, do you know what? Out of all these mediums, we've got loads of PDFs, loads of staff signatures, and loads of paid social. So then you're going to create any groupings that do not exist in the current default channel groupings. Do it in your test view so you don't break anything. And then when you're happy with it, you're going to roll that over into your reporting views. And because the acquisition report is running on the default channel grouping core reporting API, 100% of the credit, last non-direct channel, it means any of those special user-defined groupings that you've done will not show up in the multi-channel funnels report, which you definitely want to go into because you want to show that your marketing channels also assisted. Bit of a spoiler here, but typically speaking, when I look at data from social media in particular, it's really good at getting people on the customer journey. It's not really the star player that scores all the touchdowns and the goals, it's the assist. But if you were to take away that marketing from those social media campaigns, you would never get the goal in the first place. So if you are creating your own groupings, you need to go into your multi-channel funnels and create the same ones. You then need to make sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to naming your sources. As we had with that example, Facebook with a big F, Facebook with a little f, email with a big E, email with a little e. If you don't stick to what it says on the tin, it just throws everything into chaos again, and all that hard work you've done is just ruined. You also want to maybe show your work by having a spreadsheet to see if this is happening. And again, we've got a template that like records all of these URLs for you that are all tagged and bagged, so it's all going in the right bucket. And the last one, which might be a little bit controversial, if you've got people that just go, do you know what, I know you've told me to do this job, I'm still not going to do it. Consider baking this in with service level agreements with your consultant. So you're saying to them, look, we're going to pay you some money and give you some budget to do our marketing, whether that be your PPC, your email, your paid social media, whatever. If you do not tag it correctly, then I am going to do something. That might be, you might not pay them on time, or you'll take a cut of the fee, or they have to do something to remedy it. Because if they trashed your data, you then can't go back to the powers that be to say, yeah, that money we had, I don't 100% know what converted or not because somebody didn't tag it properly. And then for people in your teams, think about baking it in as a core competency. So for all of your staff, if you've got agencies or whatever, they want to get a promotion, they want to stay in a job, this is now locked as a core competency as part of their marketing. They have to make sure that they tag things correctly in the right order, as you've stated, because if they don't, you're going to get yourself into a bit of trouble. So to close off, and then we'll go through with some questions from Aidan. We'll put this on social media. I'm sure Semrush will also put this out, and the link will be put into the YouTube chat. If you would like some templates, we've got 2 in particular. If you go to this URL, you'll have access to the SlideShare. It's all up and ready for you to go and peruse at your leisure. And we've got 2 templates that we think that you would really enjoy. One is the UTM explainer. So it's going through exactly what we've gone through, explains how links work and what you need to do. And then there's another document, which is a Google sheet that you need to make a copy of, and that's where you're going to do that channel planning and agree on how things need to work, and then you can keep a log of everything. So that's me done. I'll hand over now to the wonderful, wonderful Aidan, and hopefully we've got some questions. If I can remember how to stop my screen share. That worked? Yay!
Thank you, Jill. That did work, in fact.
Sorry.
Mute yourself, woman. Jill's just obviously very keen to talk. You'll have noticed that she likes to talk about Google Analytics with a particular focus, of course, almost like a rabid focus. A Google Analytics fanatic is how I would describe Jill, all things considered anyway. We've got a lot of questions, such is the nature of this, of course, webinar around Google Analytics. It is, in essence, quite a complex platform. It is a very specific element of digital marketing, as a few of you mentioned, of course, in the YouTube channel, but it is a very necessary addition. And whilst Jill is kind of resting her voice, and, you know, clearing her mind, prepared for some more questions, to reinforce Jill's talking about this notion of UTM tracking and paid social, and Jill kind of alluded to it, but didn't tell the embarrassing story within the webinar. I once worked for the Olympics organizing committee and did a lot of paid social. I'm not going to tell you which Olympics, but we had about 2 million interactions a day, and I created a UTM code with paid_social and did not create the relevant default channel grouping within Google Analytics. Did not take the time to create a custom one. And so it all just went into social, and I looked like a fucking fool, perfectly honest. I know, I just swore, but that's how I felt at the time. And I think I'm telling you the story, to be honest, because absolutely everybody does it in some way. Big enterprises, small enterprises, startups. And I think digital, and a little bit like, as I mentioned with Semrush on the YouTube chat, it is always a learning curve. It is always school day. And it is always, of course, worthwhile to dig into it and do that extra research. Shout out to Lee, new grad, of course, in the YouTube live stream at the moment. Now, Jill, the first question, and I suppose I'm probably Frankenstein's monstering together a couple of questions here a little bit. A couple of people asked questions about this idea of Salesforce, so talking about CRM systems and the interplay of Salesforce and CRM systems with Google Analytics. And does this impact upon UTM tracking? And if so, what have you seen in the past and what would you do about it now? First question.
Okay, so things that I have seen, either it just goes to default settings, so the source says Salesforce for everything. So every single program that's working, they all say Salesforce, whether it's an onboarding or whatever. And if you're using Salesforce, you know, you're kind of getting into the depths of decent email marketing. It's, you know, it costs money to do this tool. But I saw one, as I mentioned yesterday, they did it with a capital E. They hard coded any outbound links that came from that platform. So they did what you wanted them to do for this particular client. They said, yes, we have tagged it as email. They just didn't realize that it's case sensitive, so it goes into the wrong bucket. They also didn't know that the source was hard coded to Salesforce, which means it's gone out of there. So it's just a case of speaking to the people that have set this up for you to say, can we just make sure that if they are automatically tagged, can you just make sure that it's lowercase email? And then if you want to, override with the parameters to say, we're going to decide what the sources are. So this is the onboarding email, this is the activation email database or whatever. You can just kind of go over that. But the bottom line is, if you do not tag it or you don't have all of this in, then it'll go into direct or referral. And then you can't tell your boss if it's working or not. And life is sad. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at your life is sad. Life is very sad when we don't track. You cannot manage what you do not measure. There were a few questions around Marketo and Salesforce there, Jill, so I just thought I would wrap them up together, everybody. So that's what I was doing there, get a bit of a steer on that particular element. Now, there was another question around other, and you mentioned, of course, Jill, in the webinar around this notion of traffic ending up in the other bucket. Now, other is a bit of a strange animal, to be honest. It's where Google puts things that it doesn't know where to put elsewhere. And Google, has created the channel definitions in order to help us guide us really in some ways as to how we can structure those UTM codes and track our traffic better. And Jill, of course, displayed those within one of the slides in the deck, also available, of course, on the landing page, which we flagged to you. But it is worth noting, a couple of people are quite confused about other generally refers to other advertising. So generally refers to things that don't fit within the Google product suite. Now, Google is a big fan of Google. You might call it narcissism. I suppose you might call it being friends with oneself. But Google really loves Google products. So we're talking DoubleClick, we're talking Google Ads, we're talking the Google Marketing Platform right now for those particular purposes. But other, more often than not, is other paid that falls out of, say, a paid search bucket. Sometimes you'll find your Bing ads end up in other for no particular good reason because it's not a Google product. So you just have to keep on top of it. And if you keep on top of it, all should be well. At least if you are, you're better able to manage any errors if you are familiar with what in fact is happening in your source and medium reports under acquisition. Which kind of brings us ever so neatly to, okay, we talked about UTM tracking, we talked about some of the errors, we talked about some of the best practices, we talked about some of the things that are interesting for people. And really I want to talk a little bit about reporting, really at the end of the session because it feels appropriate. So we're talking a little bit about the acquisition reports in Google Analytics. And Jill, you know very well what my favorite report is anyway. It's called the Google Ads Report, formerly known as AdWords, because I'm a bit of a paid media fiend. Jill is a Google Analytics fanatic and a paid media fiend. But acquisition can be a quite confusing set of reports because there is a lot of them, it is fair to say. So the question that came in, this one through Twitter, your favorite reports, Jill, in the Google Analytics acquisition reporting function, and what are you looking for when you look at them? Tricky question.
Yeah, because it depends. It depends on what am I trying to understand. So because you've got the 4 different areas, audience acquisition, behavior, conversions, if I was like in the mood and I'm like, I want to know what's our most popular resource at the moment, I will go down to behavior, I will go down to the all pages, but I still want to know, well, how did they get there? Because we're marketeers, we want to know how people got to the website. So I don't know if I mentioned it in the last one, but I think analytics is a bit like snug, marry, avoid, if anybody remembers that. So there might be some reports that you avoid like the plague, like custom linear attribution models. There might be some that you'll, give a bit of a snog to and, be all over. And then we should all be wedded to conversions because, we're all trying to get the same thing to happen. So there are some reports that I'll flirt with. There's some reports that I'll, go and have a bit of a smooch with. But I guess my go-to ones are always going to be the channels. I want to know, how did people get to that website? How can I change my marketing? And then what did they do when they're on the website? So I go down to the behavior and we'll go into that in a bit more detail next session. But are they downloading the PDFs? Are they playing the videos? Are they signing up to things? Like, what is it that they're doing? And again, analytics is a proxy for people. So you do have to layer the voice of the customer and speak to them because the numbers aren't going to tell you everything. But if I can at least just make sure that my house is in order and I know where people are coming from, then I get a better sense. And always a bit of the assisted conversions, just because I know it's not fair to give 100% of the credit to the star players when you've got other marketing channels that are supporting the role. So I always like to throw that in my reports.
Nice little jump into attribution there, Jill. Who gets the pat on the back? Jill did talk about in webinar 1 of the series, by the way, her concept of snog, marry, and avoid certain reports. But she likes to talk about it a lot. So it's come up again now in this particular webinar. And indeed, really a few other things to note on top of what Jill just said, mostly from a product-centric perspective, and you can see where I come into play on this a little bit. You do have to integrate your AdWords, known as Google Ads. You do have to integrate your Search Console or those reports will flatline. And thinking about, of course, this whole notion of URL, campaign source, medium, etc., that lives under your campaign reporting function within Google Analytics acquisition reporting as well. Now, so notice I have not forgotten about the question that you asked at the very beginning, okay, of the session. It's just that it doesn't necessarily relate directly to UTM so explicitly, but I'm going to pick it up now at the end. So forgive me and thank you for, of course, being patient with us so that we can get to this particular point. But how do we check that domain tracking is set up correctly, Jill, from a cross-domain perspective? Is this affected by UTM codes? So for instance, in Donatus's example, if visiting the main pages and then going to the blog, linked from home, won't they lose users or session tracking or UTM? Now, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to leave it to you. to answer.
So this is why cross-domain tracking is so vital. If you have followed the steps and you have put your property ID across blog.website, website.com, shop.website, whatever, you've added a filter to say show full URL path. So when you go into your behavior reports, it should say blog.website, website.com, that kind of thing. It means that when a visitor comes to your website, they are counted as one user, and the parameters of where they came from are associated across all of the domains because it all sits on the same floor. Now, if you don't do it, this is the reason why cross-domain tracking can ruin people. If you don't have different floors, it means that your, let's say I went to the blog and I came from Twitter, and then I went on your website, and then I converted on the website, your reports are going to say all your traffic comes from your blog because you've lost all of the parameters that come with it. So I guess if you're not sure if it's been set up correctly, check the Google Docs. We'll put a link on as well. I think I've got like a link that I can put on Twitter later. But if you follow the steps of, you know, doing the property code across everything, the filter, then it should all work, you know. You'll see everything. It's all good.
Should all work. Of course, there will always be ghosts in the system. But indeed, of course, that's the question ending what we're talking about. But kind of wrapping around that notion of cross-domain tracking and actually thinking about, hey, what's going on in the website? We are starting to actually move quite naturally towards episode 3 of this particular series, which is around behavior. So what's happening on my website? In episode 1, which of course Semrush have shared, or Semrush, depending on where you are in the world, have shared a link to the recording of the first one. The recording for this one will go up relatively shortly on the landing page in which you signed up for it. And indeed, also you'll note that we have a link in the slide deck, a link on the landing page, and a link on the YouTube chat as well to the templates and, of course, to the slide deck so that you can have it there for your use, a gift from us to you. But next time, and by next time, I mean the 4th of September, so you get a little summer holiday from our Google Analytics fanaticism, as it were. And it'll be, of course, 5 p.m. London time once again. And indeed, a link to that additionally in the YouTube live commentary chat too. So that really brings us very neatly to a close. Could you believe it's been 1 hour and 1 minute since we started talking about this? Thank you for letting us go over by 60 seconds. It's not our fault. It's very difficult to stop talking about something you're very passionate about. But a massive thank you to all of us, both myself and Jill, and of course Semrush, for coming to this particular webinar, for asking some bloody awesome questions. And of course, for all the very kind and positive commentary that is seeping out into Twitter and social media, and of course on YouTube. But we hope very much to see you once again on the 4th of September, if not before. But indeed, with that, we bid you fond farewell. And indeed, hope to see you next time. Enjoy your day wherever you're at in the world. Have a good one. Take care. See you next time.